Morning, everybody. I welcome you all to this morning service. Can you turn with me to the book of Romans, chapter 8? How many of you believe that God wants us to succeed? See, as a believer, you are created with all the equipment that you need for success. Okay? Look at Romans chapter 8 and verse 31. What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? See, that's very clear. We want to succeed. God wants us to succeed. God is on our side. And we know Satan has been defeated. We've been given authority over him. So if we aren't succeeding in what we were wanting to excel in, do you know who is against you? It's not God. It's not Satan. For the ones who are married, it's not your spouse. Okay? It's us. It's our mind. Let me show that to you. Romans chapter 8 again. Look at verse 6. The carnal mind is enmity against God. It's not talking about your spouse's mind. It's talking about your mind. What's between the 6 inches between your 2 ears? The way you think is what determines what level of success you're going to have. All of God's success was based in our spirit. The flesh, the body that you see, just goes with what drives it. The flesh, the body actually doesn't have any emotions to run it. But the mind determines to the degree that your body is going to cooperate with who you are in Christ. So to the degree that you get your thinking lined up with who you are in Christ, your body will just follow. But that responsibility lies with us. God is not going to force you to lift your Bible and read it. He won't, set the alarm clock for you to wake up at 4 o'clock to read the Word. But He's given us the helper to understand what Jesus has done. But it's our responsibility to take time, not just of YouTube, but of whatever you do, and keep our focus on the Word. And as you spend time in the Word, the Holy Spirit will reveal things to you that you need to do in your life to make your life correspond to what you're believing for in the Spirit of God, in the Word of God, really. Loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning. Father, we thank you for this fresh, sunny April day, Father. We thank you for bringing us this far this year, for making all things work together, Father, that we could be here today in a right frame of mind to hear what you've got to say to us, Father. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for your presence here with us, helping us understand what we've really got in Christ, who we really are, and what a level of success we've been empowered to possess in Christ, Father. We thank you, Father, that for none of us here there is any shortage in Christ. And thank you, Holy Spirit, for helping us understand your word, for giving us revelation knowledge of who we are and what we have. Father, we bless this service. We thank you, Father, for your Son, for bringing us here as your children to celebrate Jesus and what he did for us. We love you dearly, Father. We give you great praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let's all
Let's all stand as we worship the Lord. So I like what Uncle shared this morning, and it's very much in line with what we're going to meditate today. Check. So Uncle was talking about a mindset. I think some of us are there already. Some of us yet to be there. Okay, we are all fighting our own battles, and in our minds, that needs to change. The carnal mind needs to change. So yes, we're not perfect, we're not there yet. But this morning we're going to worship the Lord, and we're going to pray that God would speak to us and break every negative mindset that is there, that is inhibiting the success that God has in store for us. Amen? Amen. The Lord has given us a land of good things. I will press in and make them mine. They sent a couple of spies to go in and see the land. Okay, so out of, I think, 12 that they sent, only 2 came back with positive reports. The rest came with negative reports. And I think this is what they would have said. We are able to go into the country, possess the land. We are able to do it. That was their mindset. That was their mindset when they, came back and reported. And that has to be our report. Amen? That has to be our report. So let's just sing this again and just, make that our mindset and say, God, we are able to go up and take the country with the high praises of God in our mouths. As we worship the Lord, you're going to give us the land. Amen? The Lord has given a land of good things. I will press in and make them mine.
March right. are able to go up and take the country and possess the land from Jordan to the sea. And though the giants may be there, our way to hinder, our God has given us the victory.
We are able.
We are able to go up and take the country and possess the land from Jordan to the sea. And though the giants may be there, our way to hinder, our God has given us the victory.
With the high praise.
With the high praises of God in our mouth and a two-edged sword in our hand, we will march right on to the victory side, right into Canaan's land.
Amen. Lord, we worship you this morning, Lord Jesus. We worship you this morning, Father. Lord, with the high praises of God in our mouths and a two-edged sword in our hands. Lord, with your word, Lord, we will march right into Canaan's land.
Amen.
Yes, Lord, we are able to go up and take the country. Across the rivers to the mountains, Lord, we are able to go up and take the country. Yes, Father. Lord, we proclaim in your name, Father.
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father, we proclaim in your name.
Yes, Jesus.
By his stripes,
We are healed by his nail-pierced hands. We're set free by his blood. We're washed clean. Now we have the victory. The power of sin is broken.
We are healed, Father. By your nail-pierced hands we are free. Lord, that is why we have the victory, Lord. Yes, Father. We worship you. Worship you.
Up from the ashes, your love has brought us out of the darkness into the light, lifting our sorrows, bearing our burdens, healing our hearts.
Up from the ashes,
Your love has brought us out of the darkness and into the light, lifting our sorrows, bearing our burdens, healing our hearts. To a God we lift up one voice, to a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah. To a God we lift up one voice, to a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah.
hallelujah, hallelujah. Chains have been
Broken, eyes have been opened, an army of dry bones is starting to rise. Death is defeated, we are victorious, for you're alive. To a God we lift up one voice, to a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah. To a God we lift up one voice, to a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah.
to a God we lift up one voice,
To a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah.
to a God we
Lift up one voice, to a God we lift up one song, to a God we lift up one voice, singing hallelujah.
hallelujah, singing hallelujah. Yes, Father, Lord, to you we lift up one voice, Lord. We lift up one song, Lord, and we will be victorious, Father. Yes, Father, Lord, we worship you. Lord, chains have been broken, Lord. Eyes have been opened, Father. An army of dry bones is coming to life. Lord, in our lives, Lord Jesus, Lord, in everything that we are involved with, Father. Lord, you are working, Lord. You are working, Lord Jesus. Yes, Father. And Lord, up from the ashes, Lord, we will rise, Father. For Lord, your love has brought us out of the darkness into light, Father, into victory. you're here, moving in our midst, Lord. We worship you.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, walking in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here,
Moving in our midst.
moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here,
Working in this place.
I worship you. I worship you.
You are here, moving in our midst.
Moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you.
You are here.
You are here.
Lord, you're working in this place.
Working in this place. I worship you. I worship you.
Call him.
We call him Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here,
Turning lives around.
turning lives around. I worship you. I worship
You are here, mending every heart.
you. Are here, Lord. You're mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
You're the answer to it all. You wipe away our tears. You mend the broken heart. You're the answer to it all. You wipe away all our tears. You mend the broken heart. You're the answer to it all. To it all. To it all.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, Father, Lord, light in the darkness. You are the way maker, Lord. That is just who you are, Father. Lord, this morning we come to you and we submit everything into your hands. And we know, Father, you will make a way where there seems to be no way. Yes, Father, we worship you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We'll give his tithes and our offerings as we settle down. Tomorrow being the 1st of April, we'll have our Dawn Promise service at 5:30 in the morning. Right here at Mogopir, we'll have the Dawn Promise service, 5:30 in the morning. Coming Friday, being the first Friday, we'll have our divine healing meeting at 6:30 in the evening, coming Friday. We'll move into God's word now.
Hallelujah. Welcome to Sujay and Deepika. Glad you're here. So, last week, Pastor talked about exits and that we have to take the right exit, the right one, the Jesus way. That's what we saw last week. Just a minute. And the word says that those who are being led by the Spirit, they are the sons of the Lord, from Romans 8 and 14. And Ephesians 2:10 says that we have been created. We are his workmanship, created to do his good works that he has foreordained for us to do according to his will. That's what the word says. And as Pastor spoke last week, he spoke about the exits, and there are many exits, and if we take the wrong one, then we will have to go a long way and come back to the place where we want to. So we have to be careful enough to listen to the voice of the Spirit and go according to the way that he wants us to, and that's what we saw from Romans 8:14. And then lastly, we saw from 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 16, and that says, and what agreement that hath the temple of God with idols, for ye are the temple of the living God. And the word says that as God hath said, that I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And that's what we saw lastly, that the Lord dwells in us and he walks in us, he lives in us, and he walks in us and he walks with us. That's what we saw lastly last week, 2 Corinthians 6:16. So today it's part 2 of this message that we're going to see. It's from Proverbs 2 and verse 8. Proverbs 2 and verse 8. It says, he keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. He keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. Hallelujah. So we're going to see both these words. He keepeth and he preserveth. These two words. He keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. First is keeping. We can turn our Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 9. This is Hannah's prayer and what she prayed even before Jesus came into this world. 1 Samuel 2 and verse 9. It says, he will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. He will keep the feet of his saints. He will keep the feet of his saints. Hallelujah. Who are the saints? Not some statue. It's us. It's each one of us here, sitting here, watching this on live. Hallelujah. Each one of us who have been washed and cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, we are the saints of the Lord. Hallelujah. And that's what Hannah says here in her prayer. before she could get Samuel. This is what Hannah says. He will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. No man shall prevail. Hallelujah. It might look as though man is prevailing, but the word says that no man shall prevail. No man shall prevail. Hallelujah. No man can ever prevail, for the Lord, it is the Lord who keeps us, who keeps the feet of his saints. It is the Lord who keeps the feet of his saints. Hallelujah. And the Lord is keeping us. The Lord is keeping us. That's what we read from Proverbs 2. We read that the Lord keepeth and the Lord preserveth. So first we are going to see about keeping, and that's what we are seeing now from 1 Samuel 2 and verse 9 in Hannah's prayer, that the Lord keeps the feet of his saints. That is the feet of each one of us. He orders our steps, as we see in Psalm 37. Later on we will be seeing. It is the Lord who keeps our feet. You know, this is what happened in the life of the Israelites. It looked like that they were wandering in the wilderness. It looked like they had no plan or no place to go, and that they were just roaming around. But it was not like that. The Lord had a perfect plan for them. Even though they let go of that plan, the Lord made it so that they were able to go into the land of Canaan. Even though those people who first left Egypt, they were not going to go there because of their disobedience, but still the Lord's promise was for sure, and he took them to the land of Canaan. Hallelujah. So we can turn our Bibles to Deuteronomy 1. Deuteronomy 1 verses 32 and 33. We are going to dwell in these verses for the rest of this service mostly. So we can keep our Bibles to Deuteronomy 1, 32 and 33. Yet in this thing ye did not believe the Lord your God, who went in the way before you to search you out a place to pitch your tents in fire by night, to shew you by what way ye should go, and in a cloud by day. So here the Lord says in verse 32 that they did not believe the Lord their God. The Lord their God, who did so much for them, who brought them with a mighty hand, even while they were in Egypt, even in Goshen, the Lord showed a separate, he showed that these people were separate in all the plagues that were brought about. These people were preserved and they were kept. That's what this word says, that the Lord keepeth and the Lord preserveth. Hallelujah. That's how the Lord kept his people even in Egypt as they were in Goshen. The Lord wonderfully and miraculously protected them, while even the plague of the firstborn in the house of the Egyptians, when all the firstborn, even the animals, the firstborn were dead. But in these Israelites, they did not have this death because of the Passover, because of the blood that was shed. So in that way, the Lord showed clearly that he was the Lord who was keeping them, and he was the Lord who was preserving them. And even after he brought them out of Egypt, he parted the Red Sea. They came to Mara. The water was bitter. They were so angry that the water was bitter. He turned the bitter water into a sweet one. And then they came to Elim. They had the 12 wells and palm trees, everything, they had everything. And still they were saying that they did not have meat to eat. They were complaining against the Lord. And so the Lord gives them manna and quail. He said, evening you will find enough meat. You'll have enough and more meat to eat, so have meat in the evening. In the morning you go and see, you will have manna. And that is the way that the Lord fed these people and brought them. And there was a cloud, in the daytime they were in the wilderness. The Lord planned their diet, that they had this manna. They had the good diet plan by the Lord, which could keep them going, which will not upset them in any way, which will give them the strength and energy. The heaven-planned food the Lord gave them. And in the wilderness, out there in the sun did not scorch them by day, because they had this cloud which was protecting them, which had the best AC ever. They were so wonderfully and miraculously and marvelously protected by the Lord. In the night, they had this fire burning. It was not dark. They had enough and more light around them. Their animal kind, everything, they had enough and more light around, and that was the way that the Lord was protecting them. Even the wild animals could not harm them. That was the way that the Lord was protecting these people. And that's why the Lord says here in verse 33, Deuteronomy 1 and verse 33, he says, who went in the way before you to search you out a place to pitch your tents in. All these 6 lakh plus people, they were going and they had to pitch in their tents. Everybody had to pitch in their tents. Imagine such a lot of people. And the Lord sees to it that everywhere they went, they had enough and more place to pitch in their tents. They had water, they had manna, they had everything. They did not work for anything. It was there for them. They just had to enjoy it. They just had to enjoy the cool breeze, be under the cloud, and whenever the cloud lifted up, they had to go. In some places it might be for a very long time. In some places it might be for a short stay. But all they had to do is be in the presence of the Lord. When the cloud lifted, they had to leave. That is all that they had to do. But they were so complaining about this wonderful way in which the Lord led them. That's why in verse 33 he says, who went in the way before you to search you out a place to pitch your tents in fire by night, to shew you by what way you should go, and go in a cloud by day. So the Lord says, it is in this pitching of tents, that is in this camping, I am with you. In this camping, I am with you. This might not be very significant. They were just camping their tents, they were just pitching their tents, and they just had to be there night and day, not knowing when the Lord is going to lift up the cloud. When the cloud lifts up, they just have to pack up their bags and go. That was the plan that the Lord had, and they were just supposed to be in the presence of the Lord, just pitch in their tents and be there, camping. Camping is something that is so mundane. It is not very significant. Nothing spectacular happens. It is just a normal routine of our lives. Hallelujah. You get up in the morning, you see the same faces again. No face is going to change. No faces should change. The faces should be the same. Hallelujah. So that's the way the Lord has kept the family for. So camping is something that you meet the same faces, that you meet the same people, the same routine, getting up, maybe making a tea or a coffee or making the breakfast for women these days. Men also pull in, so it's just the same thing, going and dropping the children to school, picking them up, maybe changing diapers over and over again. For people who've had 3 children like us, it's been a long process, but praise the Lord. That's how the Lord wants things to be, going to the school, dropping children, and then listening to the comments from the teacher, not so good, but still you just have to be there, smilingly listen to the comments, and then come back home and think, what Lord, today? I really prayed well this morning and only went, but then see what the teacher is commenting. So many things that happen in our workplace, in our businesses. It's just the same routine. It's just the same routine that we are going through. Nothing significant is happening, we think, in our lives. But then, during the camping time, there is something that the Lord was showing these Israelites. It is something that the Lord was doing. There was something deep work of the Holy Spirit that was being done in the works of these people that, they would surely not have realized at all. But we, in these end times, in these times when the Holy Spirit is much poured out upon us, we can know that the Lord is doing a deep work in each one of us. It might just be the camping time. Be still and know that I am God. Wait wait, wait in His presence. It might be a long wait. Like these people, they did not know when the cloud was going to be lifted up. But then, when the cloud was going to be lifted, they will have to pack up their bags and go. But till then, they had to camp. So just wait in the presence of the Lord. When we wait in the presence of the Lord, surely those of us who know the word, we know that our strength is being renewed. Waiting in the presence of the Lord is not wasting. The devil may tell that, what are you doing just here, not doing nothing, just being here, and you're telling waiting. How long have you been praying? The prayer not yet answered. No, keep on praying. Keep on praying. Hallelujah. The Lord who is the Lord, He will surely answer. He's not a man to lie. He will surely answer us, and He will answer, and it will be beautiful in His time. It will be beautiful in His time. Hallelujah. All that we have to do is to have patience in the presence of the Lord. During that time of waiting, during that time of camping, the Lord may be teaching us patience. The Lord may be just telling us what community living is. The Lord might just be telling us what loving and sharing and living as a community is. Those people, they lived together. It was a community living. It was a community sharing. You know, it was not easy. Though they did not have any work to do, they were complaining. So let us not be complaining as those Israelites did. But now we have the word of the Lord, the written word of the Lord in our hands. We live in a more, privileged era than those people were. So let us be, as Romans 8:14 says, as we meditated last week, let us be those who are being led by the Spirit, for we are the sons, we are the children of the Most High God. Let us be willing to keep waiting in the presence of the Lord. Whatever routine it might look like, for us it might not look very significant, but then there is something that the Lord is doing in our lives. And also the word says that the Lord delights in our way. The Lord delights in us. That's what the word says. In whatever we do, the Lord delights. We can turn our Bibles to Psalm 37 and verse 23. The steps of the order of the righteous, they are ordered by the Lord. And the Lord delights. That's what the word says. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delighteth in His way. And He delighteth in His way. Our steps, Psalm 37 and verse 23. So the Lord delights in our way. In whatever thing that we are doing, it might be just a normal routine of just starting our car, driving down in the traffic, going and maybe getting milk, or maybe the milkman comes late. The usual routine of life, just going to office every day, meeting your boss or getting work done from your subordinates, whatever it is. The word says the Lord delighted, dropping the children to school, going and getting groceries. These are the routine things that we cannot escape from. Hallelujah. These are the things that we have to do every day. It's nothing that you complain about. It's nothing that you say, what is this? But then you just keep doing, thinking it's nothing is there. It's so insignificant. That's what we think that is happening in each day of our lives. No, but what the word says is the Lord delights in our way. In each little thing that we do, the word says that the Lord delights in us. The Lord delights in us because our steps are ordered by the Lord. Because we are the saints of the Lord. As we saw from 1 Samuel 2 and verse 9, as we saw, we are the saints of the Lord. And the Lord keeps our feet. That's what the word says. And so as we see here in the Psalm 37 and verse 23, the steps of the righteous, they are ordered by the Lord. Our steps are ordered by the Lord. If somebody says, God, do you know where you're going or what your life is going to be like? Now you're in a real mess. Let us be confident enough to tell that my steps are ordered by the Lord. My steps are ordered by the Lord. Our steps are ordered by the Lord. Maybe in the world, that's what we read in 1 Samuel 2:9. Maybe in the world they think that it is the might of man, but the might of man will not prevail. The might of man will not prevail. As per the word, it's the Lord and his steps, and he orders our steps. And so we will be victorious in everything. Hallelujah. And so because we are called to be more than conquerors. We are more than conquerors in Christ Jesus, and our steps are ordered by the Lord. And whatever we do delights the Lord. Whatever we do delights the Lord. We think that it's not a big thing that I have done. No, it delights the Lord. That's what the word says. Just like how, as parents, when we see our children, whatever little thing they might have done, it might not look big for the others around. But for the parents, whatever little the child has done, that will be as a big thing, and they'll blow it up. When they say to others, the others will think, idana periya karyam, other children also do, and these people are just blowing out things. No, it's not like that. It's something special for those parents because it's their children. In the same way, and much more than that, because we are the children of the Lord, because we are his children, the word says that the Lord delights in us. The Lord delights in us. He is just, he's just so mindful of us. Our going out, our coming in, our sitting, our getting up, everything he knows. Everything he knows, that's what the word says. Even he has count of our hair. Even we ourselves don't have count of our hair, I'm sure. But the Lord, he has count of our hair. Hallelujah. Because he delights in us. He delights in us. That's what. Imagine so many of us living on the face of this earth all through maybe of so many hundreds of years. But the word says that he is so mindful of us, that he is so much concerned about us, that he delights in us. So after this, when we go out, let us, encourage ourselves and say that the Lord delights in us. He orders our steps, and he is delighted in me. The Lord is happy with me. The delighting is something more than being happy. Delighting is something rejoicing. It shows in the way that someone speaks that someone is delighted with you. This is almost a husband and wife relationship. It's something to be delighted. It's something to rejoice. It's something that the Lord is delighted over us, because for the simple reason is because we are his children. Hallelujah. Because we have been washed and cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. Because he loves us so much. Hallelujah. And that's why he delights in us. And that's why he delights in us. It's nothing great that we have done. It is because of his grace that covers us. It is because of his love. It is because of the faith that he has given us in his word that we go on, and he delights in us. Hallelujah. So any routine, any normal routine of us, let us do it gladly, because let us be mindful of this, that the Lord delights in us. And he is interested in our little insignificant things. They are so significant to God. They are so significant to God. Each day of ours, each little thing that we do, it is so significant to God. He is so mindful of each one of us. And he is the Lord who keeps us. He is the Lord who keeps us. That's what we've been seeing from Deuteronomy 1, verses 32 and 33. We keep seeing that the Lord, he is keeping us. He is keeping us. And as we saw in this word, that camping, it might not look, it's very, very ordinary. They were out there camping in the wilderness. Nothing spectacular happens. There is not even much life around. It is only them. It is only them. It is only the Israelites. Not much. In the wilderness, how was it going to be? Only them. But they were a huge community altogether. In the same way, it looks like as though it's only we and we alone. Nothing else around. When you go out, you just see sand everywhere. There's not even much vegetation in the wilderness. That's what happens during a camping time. You don't even see greenery. You don't even see much other life around. But that is the time that you draw your strength from the Lord. That is the time that when you just see and gaze up at the sun, and as they were protected by the cloud in the daytime, and during the nighttime, the fire, The Holy Spirit is there, and He will lead us. And He is the Lord who keeps us as well as protects us. That's what the word says. He is the Lord who keeps us, and He is the Lord who protects us. And Ecclesiastes 9:10, it says, whatsoever ye find to do, do it with your might. Thus, the ordinary routine of our life, whatever we find to do, let us do it with our might. Let us do it with our might. And the word also says, Ephesians 6:7, that it says, with goodwill doing service as unto the Lord and not unto men. This might be a little difficult verse for us to take in because we think we are doing things for man. That's what we mostly think it is. But then what the word says is, whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord and not unto men. But we see only the faces of men. What the word says is, do it not unto men. Do it unto the Lord, but not as unto men. Hallelujah. So the routine, mundane things that we do, let us do it with all of our might. With all of our might, whatever little cooking maybe we have to do, whatever driving our car, going to office, doing the routine of every day, let us do it with our might. Camping is not a spectacular thing. Camping is something that maybe we have to go through it all alone. Nobody else is going to be there with us. It is something, it is a path that the Lord took the Israelites alone. It was not the whole lot of the people. It was the Israelites. It was those chosen ones that who had to go through this camping. And they could go only in the way that He wanted them to go. They just had to pitch their tents. They never knew the next step where they're going to go. And in wilderness, no GPS, nothing. If you go and you'll be actually in the same way. You won't be going any way further. And it was the Lord who was guiding them in that wilderness where there was no road, where they had no idea as to where they were going. But because it was the Lord who was leading them, because it was the Lord who was showing them the way, they were able to go. If with their own might, as we saw before, if it was with their own might, then they could not have gone a step further. It was only because that the Lord showed them that they were able to go. And He was sure enough leading them. Even though the people who left at the time when they came out of Egypt, that generation was not able to enter the promised land because of their disobedience. But still the Lord was faithful enough to His promise, and the next generation entered the land. Hallelujah. The Lord is faithful to His promise, and He is the Lord who keeps us. So whatever we find to do, though it might not be significant in the sight of us, it is significant in the sight of the Lord. It is significant in the sight of the Lord. So every morning, let us thank the Lord for His grace, for the new grace that comes into our lives, for the new grace that comes into our lives, for Jesus who comes into our lives each day, each morning. Let us praise Him and speak in tongues. Be encouraged yourselves from the bottom of our hearts, and let us enter the day thanking and praising the Lord, because even though it is camping time, it is the time that we have to learn so many things which the Spirit of the Lord is doing deep down in us. Maybe patience, maybe, just long suffering, just being there in the presence of the Lord with nothing happening, no life around, nothing at all happening, just being there. But be there. Be still and know that He is God. Just be there. Just be camping. And when the cloud is lifted up, go on. Because the word says that the Lord keepeth and the Lord preserveth. And He keepeth and He preserveth His people. He keepeth and He preserveth His people. Hallelujah. Especially during this time of elections, let us keep on praying. Let us keep on praying. Let us keep on praying. We believe that His kingdom will come. We believe that His will be done. So as those of us who are praying as prayer warriors, as prayer partners, let us keep on praying, because we believe that the will of the Lord will come. Hallelujah. We believe that His kingdom will be established. In our lives, let us continue. Camping time may not be very spectacular. Camping time may not, you might not have any visitors around. They did not have any other visitors. It was just them. It was just them. And it was just the same faces they are seeing again and again. But camping time is the time that the Lord is teaching us something, that the Lord is doing a deep work in each one of us. And that is the most insignificant time of our lives. Might look though, but then it is not. It is the most significant time when the Lord is teaching many, many things, when He is dealing with our spirit, when there are so many things that is happening deep inside us that we ourselves might not really know. But then when the cloud lifts up and when the Lord is taking us, that is the time that we know that we are going to enter into Canaan. Hallelujah. That's the way that the Lord speaks to His people, in a way that is most significant to Him. He speaks into our lives, and He is the Lord who protects us. He is the Lord who preserves us, because He preserves His saints. He preserves His saints. His preserves are going out and are coming in. Hallelujah. He preserves us. As we all know that salt, it's very much essential to preserve. And we are the salt of this earth. Hallelujah. And so the Lord preserves us. And so the Lord preserves us. It's because He has chosen us. Because He has chosen us. And so He preserves us. He preserves us. He preserves us in such a wonderful manner that the enemy cannot touch us. He preserves us under the shadow of His mighty wings. He preserves us under the cover of His holy fire. That above all the glory there is a canopy. Over all the glory there is a canopy. So the devil cannot touch us. And that's what the word says, that the Lord preserves. That the Lord preserves. He keeps and He preserves. So even this morning time, as we have come into the presence of the Lord, we surely believe as His believers, as those who have been brought, washed and cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, it is us that the Lord keeps. It is us that the Lord keeps. We just mere human beings, we with just a breath in our nostrils, it is us that the Lord keeps, because He loves us very much, because we are His chosen ones, because we have been bought with a price. He bled and died for us, and He loves us so much, and so He keeps us. And so He keeps us. We are the people of the promise. Every promise that He has spoken into our lives, He has spoken over us. And as we saw last week, that He dwells in us, He walks with us, He lives with us. Hallelujah. And we just have to be willing to walk with Him, to live with Him, because He is living in us. Hallelujah. So this morning time we are here in His presence, and camping time, He is the Lord who keeps. And that's what we saw from Deuteronomy 1 and 32 and 33, that that there is a camping time in our lives. For in each one of our lives, as believers, as those who accept the Lord Jesus as our Lord and Savior, and who commit ourselves to walk in the ways of the Lord, there is a camping time. There is a camping time. And that camping time may not be significant. That camping time may look like nothing spectacular is happening. That camping time might be the mundane thing that can ever happen to us. But that is the time that the Lord wants us to just stay quiet in His presence, to just be still and know that He is God, to just, dwell in His love, to just revel in His love, and to know that He is our God, to learn more patience, to learn more sharing, to learn more loving, to learn more caring, to learn more giving. So many things maybe the Lord wants us to learn during the time of camping. Let us just be obedient enough to just sit in the presence of the Lord. These people, they just had to collect the manna. They just had to be there. They did not do anything at all. They just had to be around. And the Lord was giving them everything they needed. But still they complained. Whatever they complained and said, we don't have this, we don't have that, the Lord gave it to them. much more in these days, in these last days, we as the people of the promise, let us wait in His presence and let us not complain of the camping time that may be happening in each one of our lives, in our routine, everyday lives, which might look so insignificant to us, but then it is so significant in the eyes of the Lord because He loves us. And let us just go on with this promise that the Lord has given us, that He is keeping us and that He is preserving us, because our steps are ordered by the Lord. And the word says that He delights in our way. He delights in our way. He delights in the everyday mundane routine that we are doing in our lives. He delights. He is delighted in us going to office. He is delighted when we take our children to school. He is delighted when we go to get our groceries. Hallelujah. Thank and praise the Lord, because He has given us the ability to do things. If not for the Lord, where can we be? Hallelujah. So the Lord orders our steps and He delights in our ways. So whatever we do, let us do it not unto men, but as unto God. Whatever we do, let us do it as unto the Lord and not unto men. So with these words in mind, we can stand to our feet and commit ourselves. It might be a time of camping that is happening in our lives. In some of our lives, we are thinking, what on earth is going on in my life? I just cannot understand. How long do I have to keep waiting? How long do I have to keep on praying? The Lord says, it is a camping time. It is a camping time. There are many things that the Lord is teaching during this time. There are many things. There are many deep work of the Holy Spirit that is being done in our lives during these times, which we may not be able to realize it. But then as things start to unfold, then we will know how blessed this camping time was. How blessed this time waiting in the presence of the Lord is, we will surely understand. Waiting in the presence of the Lord is not a waste of time. It is at this time that our strength is being renewed. It is at this time that the Lord speaks into our lives. It is at this time that the Lord leads us beside still waters. It is at this time that He leads us. Hallelujah. So let us exalt the name of the Lord. Let us thank Him for His new grace that comes into our lives as Jesus, the word of the Lord, into our lives each morning. The word of the Lord, the word is faithful. Whatever our hand finds to do, let us do it with all our might, not complaining, not, grudgingly, not with sorrow, not just, what do I have to do with this? It's not like that. Let us do it happily. Let us do it. Whatever our hand finds to do, let us do it with all our might. That's what the word says. And whatever we have to do, the word says, do it as unto the Lord and not unto men. So we might think that we are doing it because of somebody. No. Let us have this word in mind, that we have to do things unto the Lord. Whatever we are doing, let us have this in mind, that we are doing unto the Lord. It might be the normal routine that we are doing. Just getting up, maybe cleaning the house, maybe driving down, going to office, as I said, dropping the children, picking them up. Whatever it might be, maybe even changing diapers, but then let us do it. Not complaining, not because we have to do it. Let us do it because the Lord has given us the ability. Let us rejoice in the Lord because He is the Lord who supplies all of our needs according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus. Let us do it as telling the word that I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Today we have the living word in our hands. Today we have the promises of the Lord in our hands. And whatever we find to do, whatever our hand finds to do, let us do it with all our might. The steps of the righteous, they are ordered by the Lord. And the word says that the Lord delights in our way. The Lord delights in our way. We might be thinking, what is this? How does the Lord delight in me? He delights in us. He delights in us. We are the delight of the Lord. He delights in us because we are His children, because He loves us so. So that's why He delights in us. So let us, whatever we do, let us do it as unto the Lord and not as unto men. During camping time, which might look as though nothing is happening around, everything around may be looking so still. There might not even any voice also be heard, but then let us learn to wait in His presence, to just be in His presence, because camping time is the most important time in the life of a believer. In our lives, camping time is the most important time, because after that, we are going to enter into the promised land. We are going to enter into Canaan. So let us take this camping time very important as a time that we have in the presence of the Lord, that it is a time between me and my God, and this is the time that I will take it to my heart, and I will rejoice in this time, and I will revel in His love, and I will learn whatever the Lord is teaching me during this time. Let me just be obedient to the voice of the Holy Spirit. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And it is the Lord who preserves us. He keeps us and He preserves us. As we read, the Lord keeps us and preserves us, as we read from Proverbs. So this morning time, let us commit ourselves into the Lord's hand and ask the Lord to take care of our lives, because He is the only one who has designed our lives, and He is the only one who will guide us, who will lead us, who will take us along the right path, because He is the way. Because He is the way, the truth, and the life. Hallelujah, Jesus. We thank You and we praise You, Lord. Lord, we come into Your presence, oh Lord, this morning time. We thank You for the word that You have spoken into us, Lord, into our lives, oh Master. Lord, maybe, oh Lord, oh Master, like those Israelites had a camping time in their lives, oh Lord, let us not be complaining like them, but we, oh Lord, as the children of the promise, we as the people who have been set free, Lord, they were, oh Lord, oh Master, oh Lord, slaves in Egypt, and now they have been set free, and now they are in the presence of the Lord. Lord, we as the people of the promise, oh Master, who have been set free, oh Lord, by Your blood, who have been bought, oh Lord, with a price, and who have, oh Lord, oh Master, the promise in our hands. Let us be people who are willing, oh Lord, to wait in Your presence, oh Lord. Nothing significant, oh Lord, might be happening during, oh Lord, our camping time, but we surely know for sure, oh Lord, that Your presence is there, that Your cloud is there, oh Master, that You are the Lord who keeps us, and You are the Lord who preserves us, oh Master. Lord, You are the Lord, oh Master, who supplies all of our needs, oh Master. You are the Lord who girds us with strength, oh Master. You are the Lord, oh Master, who are leading us, oh Lord, in the paths of righteousness, oh Lord, for Your name's sake. We thank You and we praise You. Let us be people who are just willing, oh Lord, to, oh Lord, go in this process of camping, and for sure know that we are going to enter into Canaan, the promise that You have in store, that You have, oh Lord, spoken over each one of our lives. Every promise, it is yea and amen in Christ Jesus. And we believe, oh Master, that as per Your word, that You are the Lord who keeps us, and You are the Lord who preserves us. The enemy can never, oh Lord, overcome us, but we are more than overcomers in Christ Jesus. For greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. We give You all the glory and honor. We bless Your holy name. In Jesus' name we pray, believing. Amen. Amen.
Now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the sweet fellowship of the Spirit of the living God shall be with us till we meet the Lord. Amen. How many of us will say this morning that nothing, that everything that we do is significant in the sight of God. Amen? Amen? Camping time is very important. Praise God, we are not in Goshen anymore, where slave masters used to drive, they used to plan our days. We are liberated. We are in the camp where the Lord lives and walks among us. Hallelujah. Amen. God bless. Have a wonderful day.